Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Miller. Every week, I chat with fascinating people from all walks of life in order to bring you knowledge, inspiration, and insight. If you enjoy the show, you can support it by subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend. This is the Jeremy Miller Podcast. I remember growing up in Wyoming, seemed like every summer there was just like that apocalyptic smoke that would roll in from Canada or Montana, or even in Casper, like we had that little range and right in front of the town, and like even that would have a fire every few years. It sucks. Like, I mean, sometimes the air quality is so bad you can't even go outside. Like, you don't want to exercise outside because it's just so bad.
Yep. It's been pretty common August since I've been in Montana, August and then into September, to have really, really big fires either close to Bozeman here, or just at, on the Continental Divide, say, in like Idaho, Montana. And I'm like, that stuff will roll in and we'll have like ash on our cars. I was like the rut, the big race in Big Sky. There's like a big race in Big Sky, and it's been several years. And I was like, my wife and I slept at a friend's place up there on their porch in our sleeping bags, and the smoke was so bad. I remember waking up and then having to like brush the ash off of my sleeping bag. But I'm like, the race still went on, but it is definitely not healthy for you to be running in that stuff.
Oh my gosh. That's a running, is like an ultra, or I guess I don't know that race.
It's you should look it up. The Rut is a really, really phenomenal ultra. They have like a 50K, 28K. It runs multiple days. They have a vertical kilometer. It's really spectacular. Thousands of people show up for it. And it runs like all around Big Sky, the resort. The 50K and the 28K and the vertical kilometer go to the top of Lone Peak, which is like this just big pyramid of a mountain it comes out of the blue. Like, there's not any other mountains really that close to it, but you end up running around the resort in an awesome, like, they have a great course, and then it winds you down, takes you back up, and you climb this ridge called Bone Crusher to the top of Lone Peak, and then you descend off Lone Peak and continue running the race. And it's
damn
epic. It's epic, to say the least. There's like cables and stuff going up Bone Crusher that if you wanted to hold on, you could. It's really exposed. Super, super great race.
Have you have you done that race before?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What did you say the distance was on it?
They got a 50K, and then a 28K. And I think this year, I didn't look. They used to have an 11K, but I think they do like a 13K or something like that. And then a vertical kilometer, which is like from the base of the resort, you start and you just go to the top of Lone Peak, it's really fun. So in an hour, say, of your time, you're like way down in the bottom and you make it all the way to the top of Lone Peak. And then you ride the tram, because it's a ski resort. So you ride the tram back down off of Lone Peak. So it's a really special race. They do like a trifecta. If you do the vertical kilometer, the 28K and the 50K, it would be like the trifecta over the weekend, which not a lot of people do.
Dude,
but
that's
the
that
rut.
Sounds like fun.
It is. I've never like run in Europe or anything like that, but I think it has a lot of that feel. It used to be one of the Skyrunner, I don't know, qualifiers or whatever they are. And it's got that same feel because so many people show up, and you appreciate like small town, like trail runs and stuff for just being just that. Like, it's like local, hometown, like, like pretty low key, but this one's just so special because of like the buzz in the air, because it's usually over Labor Day. This year they moved it like 2 weeks because of construction at the resort, is my understanding. So it's like middle of September. Like the elk are bugling. Like, it's really, really special. Usually on Labor Day, the weather's pretty good, but it could snow like September. Like And like there's been years where it's snowed. This year, being like the second week of, or into the second week of September, I don't know. We'll see. It could be on the fence of whether or not it snows and they have to reroute the course because it gets pretty epic out there for sure.
Yeah, dude, that's one of my favorite parts about ultras and mountain stuff is like the unpredictable aspect of it. Like you have no clue what's gonna happen, what the weather's gonna do. Like when you're up at like 10,000 feet elevation, like the weather can change on a dime. Like it could start snowing, it could start raining, hailing, whatever it is. Like I love that aspect of it because it's like it's a metaphor for life, right? Like you don't know what could happen one day to the next. Like you just got to be ready for anything and everything. And it's such a good analogy for that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
What got you into like all this mountain stuff originally? Like, have you always been a mountain guy, like spending time in the mountains?
I grew up in South Dakota, like in the Black Hills, right by Mount Rushmore. Like my mom, I grew up in this like same house. My mom still lives in the same house that I grew up in, and we just had like a lot of timber, and like we had this big canyon behind our property. It wasn't on our property, but we would get to go and just, I don't know, hike around, make forts, like scale cliffs. So it was just like right outside my back door. So growing up, I was always out there. I was always out in this canyon, just like being a little mountain man. And I think like the influence of, like Man from Snowy River and like some of those older movies, I'm 41, so I'm like there. Yeah, VHS.
I don't know that movie.
So yeah, it's in Australia. It's really good too, or I think it's really good. But yeah, we had horses, and so like outdoor activities were really encouraged too in my family. And then just having those like woods in in our backyard was awesome because I had like moccasins. I mean, I would try to sneak around the woods, and it wasn't because I wanted to hunt or do anything like that. It's just because I just admired those people from those movies that I would watch. And as I got older, the Black Hills is it's a mecca for sport climbing. Like there's some of the best routes in the world, sport routes in the world. So in high school, I climbed a ton. Me and one of my like really good buddies, we would climb a ton, and then we started taking trips to the Bighorns and backpacking trips. And so I would, like at an early, I don't know, pretty early age in my opinion, South Dakota had a driver's license when you were 14, so I had a lot of freedom too. So we were going to the Bighorns and going backpacking and going, up to the top of Cloud Peak. And then little by little, I come to Montana to ski, just like family ski trips or whatever it might be. So I would say the Black Hills were like my incubator to going to the Bighorns, which like caused me to love the mountains like so much. Like I have, a huge appreciation for the Bighorn Mountains. And then when I got to Montana, I remember I was like, the sky is bigger. And that's like the tagline, like big sky country, like you could like drive across the border of Wyoming into Montana, and I'm like, it's bigger. I think it's bigger. So having that like sort of feeling about the mountains here, I was like, I'm gonna go to college in Montana and ski. Like that was pretty much the long and short of it. I'm like, I'm just gonna go ski. And so it was like either Montana State University or I got a little flyer in the mail for Rocky Mountain College, which is this little liberal arts school. And so my mom and I like came up to check out Montana State, and then we checked out Rocky Mountain College. And Rocky just had like this good feel about it. I went to like a huge high school in South Dakota. We had like 2,200 kids. And so we were like cattle, like you get out of class and you just get in line and go to the next class. And so Rocky, just being small, I was like, that's where I want to go. And like somehow I like landed on the ski team at Rocky. It was a complete like fluke, or by the grace of God, really. I didn't race or anything growing up, but I skied a bunch too. And so I met the ski coach at Rocky because one of the people when I was getting a tour, like, you should go talk to the ski coach. Like, they need skiers. And so I completely just lucked out. I went and talked to this ski coach. It was his first year. He didn't have time to recruit any like team members. He had some of them that were still in school, but he didn't get time to recruit. So he had like this budget, the scholarship budget, and like no joke. He's like, "You ski?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You ski pretty good?" And I'm like, "I think so, yeah." My mom was there, and she's like, "He does. He skis really good." Vouching for me. And he's like, "You want to be on the team?" And I was like, "I'd love to be on the team." Like, I wanted to come to Montana to ski. Like, that was the thing. I want to spend time in the mountains and ski. And so he's like, "Yeah, if you want on the team, I'll give you a scholarship." And I like no joke. I one of the first kids that I met at college. It's a kid from Chicago. He's one of my best friends now. He had skis on the top of his car, and it was a Volvo. And I just remember, I'm like, I got done with that interaction with the ski coach. Jerry Wolf was his name. And I went out to the parking lot and I saw Dustin. And I was like, "You got to go talk to the ski coach because they need people." And so Dustin, he grew up in Chicago, but he loved to ski. And his family, he was a good skier too. He got on the ski team, so it was like me and Dustin, and then like all these really good skiers. And so in 4 years, we had like this really awesome experience and got a race. We got to ski giant slalom and slalom, things that we hadn't done before. But in 4 years, we learned that quite well, and it was like really impactful on me just because my skiing went like to the place that I wanted it to go, for a long time. So, but yeah, we're kind of like moving from South Dakota, the Black Hills and then the Bighorns, and if you keep going, northwest, you're going to run into the Beartooth Mountains. And so that's where we spent our time as a ski team. We skied at Red Lodge. And then like literally when you ride to the top of Red Lodge, the resort, and you look, it's like Silver Run Plateau and the Beartooths and like all these peaks. And you can't quite see Granite Peak, which is the tallest point in Montana, but it's out there. And so like my friend group in college, both skiers and then just people I met, they were just mountain people too. And so we would just spend like all of our extra time in the Beartooths in particular. In the wintertime, like we were skiing, we were traveling all over the place to different resorts and skiing. But in the shoulder seasons and the summer, of course, it was like, what can we do to get into the Beartooths? So like just all over, whether it was ski mountaineering, climbing those peaks, or just like simply backpacking. I was like just covered the Beartooths. So it was really special, like 4 years for me to be like, it's an hour from Billings, and we were there for or not for dryland training, but for our regular ski season training. So we just got to immerse ourselves in the Beartooths, and there's like nobody in the Beartooths. They're just big and gnarly, and there's a short window of time that you can navigate them without snow. So we were constantly just, it's like, what can we go do? What can we go get shut down on? What can we try to climb or summit? And so, it's just increased my love for the mountains. And then, after college, ended up moving to Bozeman and kind of didn't know what. I think I told you too when you were out here. I was like, I almost moved to Texas. My wife and I almost. Maybe I didn't tell you that, but my wife and I almost moved to Texas. Yeah, she's an equine science major in college, and so we didn't really have like a plan. We were like, we're gonna get married and then we'll figure it out. So we're more than likely gonna go to Texas so she could train horses, because that's the place for that for sure. Right. And then I got a job in Bozeman, and we were like, the people were just like so nice here. Like that's what sold us. This is like 2006, right? And so it wasn't really on our radar, but I got a job, and we're like, well, let's stay in Bozeman. We can keep skiing and doing what we like love to do here. Although I was ready for an adventure in Texas too. I was like, let's go for it. So, and we've been here since. So like, yes, the mountains here, the Beartooths aren't that far away. Still make it to the Beartooths a lot, but just continued to ski. And then my wife actually, with her friend group, she started running This is like a number of years. This is a long answer to your question of why I love the mountains.
No, I love hearing all this.
But I she started running with her friend group, and they started running the Ragnar races, and they'd run like, I don't know, local like half marathons. And Bozeman has a really great running community. Like, it's just ingrained in the DNA of Bozeman. Like, yeah, people run here. Like, it's really, really cool and special. So there's like, yeah, Thursday night brew runs and this, that, and everything. But she started running those with her friend group, and they were all like, they were training, and they'd go and they'd run. Those Ragnar races are like, you get a van, and then everybody does like their leg of the race. And then the next person goes, and they start, and they run for, I don't know, 24, 48 hours. They just keep running, just to kind of in a rotation. And I went to one of them that they had in, I think it was Idaho, that they were doing. And I was just like really blown away about like how positive and encouraging that environment was. And I was like, and I like growing up too, like I love the mountains, and I loved walking, but I had asthma. So I was always the guy who got out of the mile run because I was on inhalers. And I think it was like allergy induced asthma really, because I ended up growing out of it when I went to college. But I'm like, I never ran. I was like, I never got the President's Physical Fitness like blue badge, like, because you would get these badges back in the day, and I always get.
We never had the President's Physical Fitness test, whatever it was called. We never had that. No.
It's I don't know when it stopped, but I just remember there was like a stretching one, like how far you could reach past your toes, and then I think there was like push-ups and pull-ups and maybe sit-ups, and then there was the mile run, and you had to run the mile under like 7:30 or something like that. And if you did all that stuff, you get like this blue patch. And if you didn't do all those, you get like a red patch. And so I always got the red patch. Like, I'd always get the red patch because of running. And so I'm like, I never cared to run at all. But seeing that environment with my wife and her friends, and just, yeah, like how everybody just like lifted each other up, I was like, there's something to that. Like it got my interest, for sure. And I literally grew out of asthma when I got to college, so I could like start running for dryland training and stuff, although I hated it. But I'm like, I could run, and I didn't have to have an inhaler. So I was like, I kind of started getting curious. And then a couple of my wife's friends were running a trail race out here, and they were like, with my curiosity, they were like, you should do it. Like, I'm like, I don't know, like running, like do you run like that far? It's a 38K. But I'd seen that environment, and I was just curious enough. So I literally went on one training run with them. And in one day we ran like 17 miles. I was just like, I can't believe, and we didn't run all of it. You hike it. Like trail running, it's not, some people do run for the entirety, but not a lot of people run for the entirety of these trail races.
Those people are Courtney DeWalter.
Courtney DeWalter, yeah, like there's the person that runs for the entirety of it. I'm like Killian Jornet or some people like that. So it's a misconception when people say trail running, because it's a lot of trail walking. But I was like, I can't believe we went that far. Like, that's so much further than you go in a day of backpacking or a day of hunting or whatever. And then I signed up for the race and went and did it. And it's, not a marathon, whatever, 23 miles. But I like was completely devastated. Like I've never like chafed before. Like I experienced things that I'm like, you just can't even, like, you can't make this stuff up. I ran, like, I did one training run, and then I did a 38K, and like my body like my upper body was like all these little like bumps, like water blisters almost, because I just never sweated that way with the t-shirt on before, in that short amount of time. And like I had chafing in places that I was like, what is up with this? But I was hooked immediately. Like crossing the finish line of that race, I was just like, I got to do this. Like, I got to dive in full force. Like, this is so cool. There's a lot to learn. I mean, I literally couldn't walk after it. I was like, my knees hurt so bad. But I was just like, I know I can like figure it out. And like the people cheering and like the like high fives and hugs and all that stuff at the end just totally hooked me. I just love that sort of positive environment. And I mean, I just went on a tangent after that. Like it took me a long time to walk. My IT band on my right side was like toast, like completely toast. So I'm so like stubborn that I went to my buddy who's a PA and I'm like, could you give me a cortisone shot? Cause I'm like, I need to like fix this IT band. Cause I'd Google searched enough and I was just like, and that's not the thing you should do at all. I wouldn't tell anybody like go off the couch and devastate yourself, but it is a good way to like be like, all right, like now I would like to figure this out and I'd like to dive into the details and become a student of it for sure. So I got a cortisone shot from him. He did that for me and I was like, now I can walk, you know? And then I just like started on a training plan of sorts, but I would go to the gym at, you know, Fuel Fitness in Bozeman, like pretty much every morning. Always like kind of my dryland training from college. I kind of took that same philosophy and would go and just stay in shape so I could do, you know, what I wanted to when I wanted to. And there was a trainer there, Jimmy Alsobrook, and he is really well known in Bozeman, but just like the nicest guy. And so if you tell him like what you're doing, he was always one to be like, all right, here's what you need. He'd give you sort of a plan, an informal plan, just because he geeks out on helping people out. And so
I love people like that.
Dude, he'd just like come over. He's like, Weston, here's what you need to do now. And so I just like would listen and learn. And I kind of knew some people that ran, of course, my wife's friends group, but they ran a lot of roads and stuff. So not necessarily trail runners. And then I just signed up that next summer. I signed up for like every race. Like I was running a race like every 3 weeks. I was like, I'm just going to do all of it. And it was awesome. I'm like, I completely devastated myself again. My left IT band then went, and I was just like, because I did my PT and stretching and stuff on my right one. I got that cortisone shot. And then I went back to my buddy and got another cortisone shot on my left IT band because I was like, I have to run the Ridge Run, which is the Bridger Mountains. There's a race here. It's like pretty famous in Bozeman. It just runs the length of the Bridger Mountains. And I went to my buddy and he's like, Weston, like, you can't wing it. You know, I'm like, what was I, late 20s, I guess. He's like, you can't wing it. You're getting older. Like, you gotta like, I'm like, oh, I am training and doing this, but learning about time on your feet running, and like what sort of like stretching and mobility you need to do was one of the things that I was getting better at, but I wasn't that good. So he gave me one more. He's like, this is the last cortisone shot. He's like, you need to figure this out. So that just made me dig in even more and, you know, like dive into the IT band stuff, which there wasn't a lot of information on, but it kind of boils down to doing pigeon pose mostly for me. And then just making sure that I'm like really consistent on that, stretching that whole IT band all the way down, you know, like your lower back all the way down through your feet, honestly.
Did you find that like glute exercises would help with your IT band too? Because I used to have terrible IT band issues, and then I would strengthen my glutes, like do like a lot of RDLs and deadlifts and stuff, and the IT band stuff would go away.
I totally went on that path too, with the glute activation and RDLs in particular. Then I ended up tearing my hamstring in my right side, my high hamstring from RDLs. Like I remember it like it was yesterday because I was at Fuel Fitness. I was doing RDLs. Jimmy was like, you got to do RDLs for running, figuring this IT band stuff out and that glute activation. And I just went too heavy. Like, you don't have to go heavy on RDLs. And I went too heavy. And it was before the rut then, which we were talking about earlier. And I just have, I mean, like high hamstring tear. Like, and I have like rather large glutes. So it's really hard for me to, like, I'm like on a softball and a piece of PVC pipe trying to like roll that stuff out.
Gosh.
And that was too, like, it was a loose plan of sorts, you know. I'm just kind of dabbling in this, learning from people that are around me and saying like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And strength is always like a big component, but also, yeah, having somebody actually say like, don't go over this weight would be a good thing for a person like me who is like, oh yeah, I'll just go for it. Like, kind of wing it sort of. But I know I need to do it. But I totally tore, and I did a little bit on my left at the same time.
Dang.
I was like, man, so like two
You
whole
were a
years
mess
of
for a
IT
little
band.
bit.
Yeah, I'm like 2 whole years of IT band and then high hamstring. But the thing about a lot of this stuff is like it's not like so debilitating. You start learning that you need to take time off and you need to heal, which is like one of the biggest things I think for anybody in fitness to recognize is like, it's okay to rest. It's okay to let your body recover, because we're driven like just enough to be like, no, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, I'll be fine. I'll run through it. Like, even getting a cortisone shot, like in hindsight, is a really silly thing to do. Like, you don't need that. It's not good for you in the long run. But for a person like me, it's kind of like beating me over the head with a cast iron skillet. Like, hey, like you gotta get a little smarter about this, man. So all those pieces, I'm like, I don't want to like stop. I still want to run the race. So I would like toe that line between just being like injured and not really fully functioning to like, I gotta do this, which is important in some ways, but also sometimes you could be like, if I were to tell myself, hey, like, you don't need to do the race. Like, what are you trying to prove? You know, like, I mean, like, take your time off, get recovered. If you want to do this in the long run, for the long term, then here's some of the pieces that you should do. And I think a lot of it comes down to, like, now you would get a coach and you would have somebody who has all that experience. Like, for me, I'm like, I can tell people this now. I'm not a coach or anything like that, but I can tell people like, hey, like, ease into it. Don't go off the couch. Like, that's not a good idea. But it is pretty cool for me to be like, I am capable of that. Like, even with all of these things in the way, like, I'm still capable of going and accomplishing the task. And like, circling back around, it was like a big thing for me to have like a season of no injury. And once you get to that, I'm like, then it's so fun because you can just go anywhere. Like, you can go run a race if you want. You can go pace a friend at another race. Like, you're really well equipped. My path just took like quite a few more years than a person who would get on an actual plan and follow that plan through. So
yeah, that's a good point of like, I think there is kind of a time and place where you want to push yourself like that, because like when you're first getting into something like running, like, you don't really know where your limits are. And like, if you are a person like yourself, who's obviously like, you've got the discipline and motivation and like, you're willing to keep pushing forward, even though you've got all these roadblocks in front of you, like, I think it's important to kind of sometimes, at least once or twice, get to the point where obviously you're not causing like a long-term injury or where it's going to, screw you up forever. But like, and some IT band issues isn't going to kill you. It just takes time to heal it up. But like, without doing that, like, you wouldn't have found your limits, and like, you wouldn't have, opened some of these doors to like, oh, I can actually do these things if I want to. I just need to figure out how to be smarter about it. Right. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, man, I love that. Dude, I love hearing people's origin stories, and it makes so much sense now. Like, all the things that you do, and like, why you run hundreds and why you're like so involved in all this mountain stuff. It makes sense because you're like born and bred in the mountains. You've always been outside, always been doing like physical things.
Yeah.
So I just love hearing stories like that. Well, how did you, or how long did it take you to get from that first, you said it was like a 38K or something until
Yeah.
your first 100 miler?
That took, yeah, 38K was probably in 2000. What was that? I'm terrible about time, like 2010. Yeah. Yeah, 2010, because we hadn't had a kid yet. 2009 or 2010. And then I ran a 100 miler in 2018. So, yeah,
Okay,
8 years.
nice.
I
Which
like
one was that? Go ahead.
Bighorn. Yeah, I ran
Okay.
Bighorn, I think in 2018. And I had to go back and look at like my like run sign up stuff sometimes too, because I'm like I'm like it just all gets mixed together for me. But it took a long time. I loved trail running. I loved like the longer distances and seeing that. I'd heard about people running 100 milers, and I'm like, that's really silly. Like, why would you do that? And along this like running path, one of my good buddies is really influential, and I work with him now. His name's Eric Peterson. He would go and run these like just mountain runs with his buddies, and they would go through like this really cool country in a day. And it was like one of my ulterior motives to like get invited on one of these runs with them. So like in my training, and it took me literally like 3 years to get an invite with these guys, for them to say, "Hey, Weston, do you want to go and run this one day with us?" Um, and I'm like, I told my wife that day when I got like the call, like Eric's like, "Do you want to go with us to the Black Canyon?" I was like, I made it. Like I got an invite with Eric to go on the Black Canyon run, which is into Yellowstone, and it's like I'd heard about it for quite a while. Like they'd go and do it and then show me a picture here and there. And his group of buddies, one of the guys in that group in particular, his name's Kevin Davis, and he's like absolute phenom. Like he's just one of those people that like instantly I'm like I have like a lot of respect for you, and I'm in admiration of what you do, because he's like a really awesome, really really awesome husband, a fantastic father, and he also runs like a ton of hundreds. And so I I in running with him, like on that first run, um, I I formed a relationship with him, and then I got to pick his brain about running and like his tactics and all of that. And then he invited me in 20, I think it was 2017, to pace him at Hard Rock. So like over that period of time,
Oh, nice.
just like getting to see him. And when I went to Hard Rock, um, I was like, after that experience, I'm like, I have to run 100, because Hard Rock is that the buzz and the community. It just like solidified it for me. I was like, I'm running 100 now based on this experience. Like I was so blown away about Hard Rock that I was like, I really have to run 100 now. And I would like to run Hard Rock at some point in my life, although I'll probably be 60 by the time that happens. But I just went on that path of like I have to run Hard Rock, or I have to run 100, and I would like to run Hard Rock because it's unbelievable. It's like one of the coolest events when it comes to mountain running or mountain recreation in general. It's the biggest mountains. It's arguably one of the toughest races that's out there. And just like the people, like at the end of Hard Rock, it's a 48-hour cutoff. All the people that finish like
Jeez.
first come back, and they cheer on the last place finishers, which is like heartbreaking because somebody will come in like a minute after the cutoff, and like they don't get a finish technically, but they still finished. But there's those people still cheering them on, and that's really unique in sporting events, I think, to have somebody who is the best like turn around and come back and cheer on someone who is finishing, like in twice the amount of time. Really, arguably much more difficult than finishing the race in 24 hours is finishing the race in 48 hours. Like, that's far more difficult.
100%.
But that whole experience for me, I was like, yeah, I got to do it. So I was like, sign me up. I'll do that. And 100-mile races, they tend to be all consuming. Like I'm did that, and I did one other one then in 21, and I was like, they just take over. Like, even though you don't want it to, like when I started running, I was like, it's so simple. Like, I don't need anything, just a pair of shoes and, like some water and some trail mix,
That's the biggest lie everybody tells you.
It is. Like, next thing you know, like my son, I remember one time in the grocery store, it was like, he was like, he wanted something in the checkout line, some candy or something. And I was like, no, you can't get that. Like, and he's like, you always get what you want. And I'm like, I'm buying groceries. He's like, no, you always buy running shoes. I was like, well played. Like, that's fair. His observation of me was buying more running shoes. Cause yeah, you get sucked into that, and you're like, I need this pair for this, and this pair for this, and this pair for this. And so it gets bigger than what you initially think. Well, a lot of things do. Like, that they're going to take more work than you initially think. And hundreds are that way for me. And it's not like you have to, for me, like I have to do one every year, but it is something where I'm like, I do have it on my list. Like, I would like to do this one down the road, but I'm not going to let running take over my life so much so that what my kids are interested in or what my wife wants to do is taking a backseat to my running. Like, I'm like, I do know that. And that's a lot to Kevin Davis, who I was talking about, and just seeing him with his interactions with his family, because as his daughters got older, he started removing the 100-mile races from his agenda and his docket to coach soccer, for his daughters, because that is really much more important. They saw him, they got to cheer him on. And the same with my kids. They've got to see it. I think it's good to set an example, and it's fun. It's fun personally for me when my son's like, you hear him, or both of them say like, yeah, my dad's run 100 miles before. I was like, like, that makes my heart happy that that's impactful on them. Like, they know that that's a long ways to run. And I hope that one day they do that, or if they want to, they draw on that even. Like, I'm like, because we can push ourselves a lot further than we recognize, then 100 miles is a good litmus test for that. Because, like, I mean, it's really not that long of a period of time in the big scheme of things, and life's going to throw like a whole bunch of other tough stuff at you, and you can take those lessons from running 100 miles or 200 miles or running a 5K, honestly. Like, running's running. And say, like, I did that, like, now I can do this, like, really tough thing that's coming my way. So, yeah.
I love that, dude. Yeah, that's a good point you just made at the end of, like, not everybody has to go run 100 miles, but it's like, hard is relative. It's like the hardest thing that you've ever done is the hardest thing that you've ever done. And that could be a 5K. That could be a mile for some people.
Totally.
But it's like, continuing to push those limits and unlock these different things that you think that you're capable of. And I think almost always you're going to surprise yourself, and you're always going to be able to do more. Like, I was just pacing before I saw you at Crazy Mountain last weekend. I was pacing out at Tahoe 200, and one of my buddies, he's 22, and he was doing his first 200 miler, and he wanted to quit so bad at 100 miles. Like, he was beat mentally, physically, wanted to quit so bad. And we like just sat down, had to talk, how to get a reset. And then he'd crush another 100 miles after that. It's like,
unreal.
What the mental aspect of these things are so fascinating. And it's, I haven't run 100 miles yet. I'm signing up for Bighorn next year, which I'm stoked. That was your first one too. I didn't realize that was your first one. Bighorn, it's so like sentimental to me for kind of similar reasons to you, where like I grew up going to the Bighorns every summer. And so I love that part of your story as well. But what was the other 100 miler that you did in 2021?
I did the Wyoming Range 100. It was a first year race.
Oh, you've done that one. Okay.
Yeah, and it was so fantastic. Like, it was like so many lessons wrapped up into one race. Um, coming out of COVID, working from home, training like that year, even for me of training was like, well, I guess I had signed up for it in 2020 and then COVID canceled it. And then I ended up doing it in 2021. That would have been, yeah, their first year then technically. But I was like, I mean, I ran by myself. It was just really interesting to train and do all that. Come home, do my work and then jet out to the mountains. So then coming into that race too, it was just interesting because people are starting to, be okay. And then in the running community too, like we're all hyper conscious of our health. Like I don't want to get sick because I don't want it to mess with anything running wise. Like I don't want any lung problems. Like I'm nervous about that. So yeah, getting back into then the 100-mile scene in this kind of hometown race, a first year race. There's a lot of what ifs on a first year race. It's even the Crazy Mountain 100 going last year for the first time. You just don't know. And I'm that's one of the things for me. I chalk it up to curiosity. I love that. I love not knowing. I do know the route. Yes, there is a route there. You can make it across these mountains. People have for a long time. So I like that kind of self-sufficient style. But even training for it, it lends itself nicely to Bozeman style of training, a lot of vert. We've got that. So I know different from Bighorn. Bighorn, you can run a lot more of it, but this one, it's going to be a lot of power hiking, which is in my wheelhouse. And even getting ready for that race, it was in August, and that weather, it changing, as we were talking earlier on too, it can change in a moment. It did. We were driving down there, and it snowed in the Wind Rivers, and you could see the snow in the Tetons, and I'm just oh, this is gonna be everything I want. I love that when it gets gnarly. I love just yeah, with the right gear, just charging, and you can make it through a lot of that stuff if you are prepared. And then this storm really settled in, and so we got all the way to Pinedale, which is where the race is supposed to start, the night before. And in the pre-race meeting, they said, hey, we're going to change the course entirely. It's going to be an out and back now as opposed to a point to point. So we drove all the way back to the finish. And this is the night before. And so in a lot of these things too, you're planning, you're what is this going to be? Where do I need? I have all my drop bags. I have all my crew. All of it is labeled and ready to go for what was going to be the normal race. That just flipped it on its head. And so the moral of the story for me is I think Yvon Chouinard talks about it. He's make a plan, then throw it out the window. I think that I probably misquoted him, but I think Yvon Chouinard is the guy who's it's good to have a plan. It's good to have a plan and have it there, but just understand most stuff is not going to go according to plan. And this is the perfect example. And I'm sweet. This now becomes Bighorn because it's an out and back. A lot of the profile was similar with there's more vert for sure. And these climbs are going to be pretty gnarly. Now that I have to do these ones in the latter half 2 times. And I'm not going to get to see as much of the mountains as I wanted to see. That was probably the hardest part for me. I was oh, I wanted to see that whole stretch. But they changed it. I'm adjusted, moved drop bags around, figured out everything with my crew and where they needed to be, kind of simplified it in some ways for them a little bit. Although they're driving around this mountain range a lot. And it was just the first half of the race, I would say for me, was pretty decent weather. There was snow up top, and then another round of storms just settled in for the second half, and it was gnarly. From lightning, rain, snow, hail, everything. I've never been so close to getting struck by lightning before, but there was one point where you had to go up to this fire lookout station. You had to get a postcard. That's how they knew you were going to you were at that station, like you did that leg of the race. So you had to bring that
Okay.
postcard back with you. And I'm like, my buddy Nick English, he ran crazy this year. He was pacing me in that section, and he paced me actually for like 40 miles. And I probably, if it was not for the gear that I was wearing, like the rain gear that I was wearing, and then Nick as a pacer, I'm like, I would have bailed, because I was like, it was really, really tricky as far as like hypothermia. A lot of people were like, there was a lot of
Jeez.
people pulling out of the race just because like the elements were so bad. But Nick and I were just like buttoned up and really ready to go. So we'd go through an aid station, and they're like, "You look like pretty good. Like, are you going to keep going?" "Yeah, we're going to keep going." And they were cutting people too if they, like medically, like they were in rough shape. Um, and so we just kept charging, and it just kept raining and kept raining. And then there's this evening section, I don't know, like 70-ish miles in, and Nick is just in front of me, and he's just yelling, "Hey bear," like "Hey bear." And it's like really thick and overgrown. And when it rains, it just like, it even gets like even tighter, it seems like. And he's just like whacking bushes with his pole, and we're just like cruising through. And I'm like, I can't really talk, man. Thanks for saying "Hey bear," like, but I'm just like trying to make my way. Um, and the course too, like since it was supposed to be a point to point, the way that they marked the course was in one direction. So a lot of those flags and stuff didn't work in the other direction. So coming in, you couldn't see a lot of the course markings. And then there's a lot of off trail too. And so it was really hard to navigate. Like there was a lot of sections where the runners, those of us that were out there, especially in the dark, were just like, "Where do you have it? Do you have it?" We're following our GPX files and stuff, but everything's a little different. I mean, I was off course for, I don't even know, probably 7 miles at one point, and
Oh gosh.
recognized that. Um, and then like coming back with Nick, I was just moving so slow because the rain had just like set in, and the trail was just pure water. And you could go up on the side of the trail if you wanted to, and then you'd drop back in, and your feet would get so cold in the water. I would kind of go back and forth. We had like several river crossings which are like blown up in the pitch black, and I'm just like, man, like this could get like really tricky. So Nick would go and like cross and make sure that I could cross, and then I'd go and then make it across, fortunately. But the river blew up like big time. Um, and we were still just trying to find the trail. At one point, like the last aid station, I'm like, we could see the fire in their aid station, and like we just couldn't make our way. It was all willows and alders, and like we're like, where is the trail? There's no trail. Like, and we eventually did make it. We were like cross the river, go back across. Like it was just a complete adventure. And still like one of the highlights of my life for sure. But we made it to that aid station. They had that like little mini burger sliders with like mustard and pickles on them. I was like, "Thank you so much." And they were like, "We knew you were out here," because there's like not very many people like in the race now at this point. And not very much communication. My wife was like, "Yeah, we could use our inReach," and that's about it. So I'd send her an inReach, and when it would go through, she would kind of find where I was. But as far as the race goes, you're pretty much out there on your own. So my wife was wondering where I was, and I'm like, I'll make it. And it took me 42 hours to finish
Oh
that
my
race.
gosh.
And it was like, I'd never hallucinated before. I never got to that point, but it was always like one of my things. I'm like, I would like to push myself to that point. Like I'd love to get out there, and I remember like, yeah, the hallucinations were crazy. Like at one point I like stutter stepped because I thought I was going to step on a skeleton like that was like right in the trail, and I was seeing stuff off in the
Oh my god.
distance. And I was telling my pacer this too, and he's just like, "No way." I was like, "Yeah, I'm there." Like, I can't believe this is happening. We're out here, and we've been out here for way too long. I'm like, "Thanks for being here with me," you know. because it was really, really helpful to have a pacer for me. And yeah,
Jeez.
we finished, I don't know, it was like the sun was just coming up then. And I've never stayed awake for that long before, but it was really like it was really, really impactful for me. It was incredibly stressful for my wife. Pretty fun for my boys. They just made forts as they're waiting for dad. And yeah, that race. I would love to go back and do it. My wife will have nothing of it, but I'll sign up for it at some point. Just go back and do the point to point.
Dude, that sounds like
Yeah, it was epic. So yeah,
dude, it sounds like such an adventure. And you kind of said a minute ago of like these aren't really races a lot of times, like these hundreds. It's more of like adventure slash survival at some points where it's like just get to the next aid station, just get to the finish line. Like you're not really concerned about time or anything. You're just like just get to the next point basically, which is it's so fascinating. And I feel like 100 miles is becoming more and more normalized now. Like I feel like the marathon used to seem, at least to me, the marathon used to seem so like, oh my gosh, you ran a marathon, and now there's like moms with like 5 kids that go out and just run a marathon, and it's like nothing. And then now 100 milers, like I remember you could probably attest to this. Like I remember hearing people talk about hundreds where it's like there'd be like 20 or 30 people there to run it. Now it's like Leadville, there's like 1,000 runners, and that's like after this big lottery system and stuff. It's like it's becoming more normalized, and I think people understanding how to do it better and stuff. So it's cool to see. Like, how do you feel like the trail scene? Because I mean, you said you've been doing it since like 2010, right? So how has it grown from your perspective?
I just seen like more and more adoption of it across the board. It is like pretty frequent when somebody finds out that you run, whether it's a marathon or anything, like their follow up to you, like knowing that you do that, and you don't usually say anything. They're just like, I can't believe you run that. Like I could never do that. And like instantly I'm like, yes, you can. I guarantee you could, like, because I'm that person. Like, I'm like, I had asthma, and yes, I love the mountains, but I never thought I could run. Even run downhill, 50% of a race. Like, you're going to run downhill. Like, you're going to, like, make your way. I'm like, everyone is capable of doing something like that should they want to, or should they be motivated in that fashion. So I think more and more as we see other people doing it, then it's like a first year race, like that Wyoming range race. There's a whole bunch of people that are never going to sign up for a first year race, but they might sign up then for the second year and the third year and so on once they see other people modeling that, because it becomes possible for them in their mind. And so it's a good thing that other people are modeling it, and then ushering people in and saying, yeah, come do it, come try it out. You didn't think you could, but one foot in front of the other, and now all of a sudden, like, you're doing this too. And it's, I call it like manufactured hardship, because now in today's day and age, we don't have a lot of actual hardship. Like even 100 years ago, or say 150 years ago, like, you may not live through the day. You may not live through the week if you don't eat, or if you get a toothache, like you may not live through the month if you get a toothache. So like now we're like looking for these hardships, and running happens to be one of them, and fitness in general. Like there's a community, and if you're ushered in and you start feeling part of that community, it's like there's no stopping you then, because you're experiencing these sort of like hardships that, yes, you're signing up for it. Maybe you're paying for it. Maybe you're just showing up for it, but you learn a lot of those lessons about life through doing those, kind of getting yourself in that mode and committing to something and executing on it regardless. I would say too, regardless of outcome. Like, I mean, even not completing something is more valuable than completing something. Like, people call it failing, but I'm like, you're going to learn more from that. You're going to learn more from an injury or an upset, or, that other like hardship that you couldn't fathom before. You're going to learn more from that than you are from actually like crossing the line and getting a medallion or something like that. So
yeah, that's such a good point. I always say like you win some and you learn some, and I think that's a perfect way of describing it. Is like it feels great to win, but you definitely learn more when you lose or when you fail.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, like out of all the races I've done, maybe you can relate to this too. Is like I don't think you ever want to finish a race or doing some big challenge and be like, oh, I think everything went exactly to plan. Like, I think you want to find things that went wrong and find the things that you can improve on, because that's what keeps you coming back, right?
Big time. Yeah, big time. I'm like those little tweaks you can make, because you're like, oh, I just want to like. It's not very often that you get like a redo on things. Like you're like you can. I do this with like on a day-to-day basis with my boys. Like going to school, say. And yeah, my wife, she works in the OR at the hospital. So she like 3 days a week, she leaves super early. And so then I'm like, it's my responsibility to make sure that, yeah, oldest one gets on the bus, the younger one takes to school and stuff. And there was like a period of time too, where I would like really hustle them. I just really like put the pressure on them. Like, we gotta go, like, and I would do that. And then I'm like, I want to redo, like, I don't want to like hustle my kids so much, but I was like, yeah, I got to get to work. And like, I got all this stuff that comes after getting you to school. And I'm like, and you would have the next day to try to like do it better or not hustle them as much. And racing is one of those, like, as far as like if you do one, you're going to see all those things that you want to improve on, and then you're inevitably going to want to do another one, because you're like, that's where I tested it out. And then you have a period of time where you can work on all those things, like your patience, and you can make those tweaks, and then you can go and do it again, and then you'll learn from that one as well. So I'm like, those little pieces are priceless. I think running lends itself well to that. So, yeah.
What do you think is the hardest part about hundreds or these mountain races? Is it the patience? Because that seems like a big thing that I've had to overcome as my races get longer, and it seems like that's one of the things I hear people talk about a lot. What do you think that's the hardest thing, or what would you say is the hardest thing about these?
For me, it's yeah, patience, or call it pacing, your pace. Like, pace and patience like go hand in hand, I think, because it's like, when do I go? Like my buddy Kevin, he at Bighorn too, and like saying, he's like, Bighorn does not stop until you hit Jaws. Like, that first 50 mile, or does not start until you hit Jaws. Like, that first 50 miles is nothing. Don't even consider it a race. Like, when you hit Jaws, that's when it becomes the race. And so that's like the pace game. How patient are you? Because you start out and you're like, I feel so good. This is awesome. Everybody's running. That guy's running. That gal's running. Like, how do you go about that? Like, do you get sucked into that, or do you go like at your speed and say, yep, I want to keep it in the tank so that I can finish strong? And so like that's the piece for me. Not that it's the hardest, but it's like the most interesting piece of the puzzle. Like, I'm like, because if you do that right, then you have it in the tank and you can finish strong, and you can see, well, yeah, maybe I could improve. Maybe I could cut time off. I don't know. When I do it again one day, like, I know that I can make these little tweaks and I can push it a little bit more, 30% of the way through, but then back it off again. So, and then stomach. I'm like, stomach is like the one. I'm like that if I have a successful race and my stomach didn't blow up, I'm like, it is a successful race if my stomach didn't go. Like, I'm like, yep, I did it well. My body is processing everything the way it should. I'm fueling. And so for me individually, I'm like, I consider that like a success. So we all know, like, day in and day out, what we put in our bodies is like, it's really impactful, and we don't necessarily key into it like in everyday life, but it does. Like, it pays off, and like yeah, hydrating and having good nutrition pays off like dividends in like how you feel and how moody you are and how patient you are with your kids, like that sort of stuff too. So you get those lessons from running as well. But
what's your like normal day-to-day diet look like? And then what does your race day nutrition look like?
I like we eat a lot of wild game. Like I love to hunt, so we eat like primarily elk, deer, antelope.
Nice.
So we do have that red meat. And then
That stuff's like superfood.
It is. There's not any fat in it, so like there's no fat. So like I grew up pretty like homeopathic. My mom's really homeopathic, and so I love that sort of like, yeah, we have a garden, like we'll do that. We have a short season here, but pretty well rounded when it comes down to it. It's not like I stay away. Like my wife makes sourdough bread. Like I love that. I still have carbs. I've gone through periods of time where I've done like full like keto and done all the fat burn stuff too, just as like experiments to see, but just well rounded, like a good breakfast, a good solid breakfast, having some good sugars, some fruit, that sort of stuff, is really, really helpful for me. So I'm like, we do a lot of eggs, a little bit of carb, and then good sugars, for breakfast. And then lunch, like at work, like it's funny too, because we're a fitness company, we're a fitness app, and so like sometimes our eating habits aren't the greatest, especially when we're busy. So we've got like a few like factor meals. We'll typically do those. So like, or clean eats. We'll do those just so that like for the sake of time, we'll have those, and then like a good solid dinner. Like it's harder and harder too as my kids get older to have as good of a dinner as we would like maybe in the wintertime too. Like days are shorter, so we're inside a bit more. But typically like something good along the lines of, yeah, that healthy balance, lots of vegetables as well. So I'm like, and as far as race day goes, I'm like really tried and true with like an elk burger, with some avocado and bacon. Like I'm like elk burger and then sweet potato fries. Like I'll make like a sweet potato, just dice it up and cook that. And that's like my go-to across the board. I've spent a lot of time trying like this, that, and everything. And I'm like, I'll forego the whole pasta feed because I haven't let myself eat that sort of way. Like I'm like, then your stomach blows up. But I'm like tried and true, like easily digestible, like same thing. And I look forward to that. Like I'll typically make like, yeah, a couple of them and have one and eat it later. But like one of my tricks for me too is like fueling about 2 weeks out from the race. I'll just take a day and I'll do like all of my like Spring Energy. I'm a big fan of Spring Energy gels.
I love those.
They're like basmati rice primarily. They're just really, really good all around. But I'll take my race nutrition for that 100-miler and I'll do it like 2 weeks out. I'll just take a day and I'll just consume like what I'm planning on eating at that race in my drop bags and everything, just to make sure that my stomach's doing good. And I really like that. Even for shorter ultras, I'm like, I'll just do that just because I want to make sure that this stuff is all good. And then, yeah, I'll typically cut out, if it's a 100-mile race, I'm like, I'll cut alcohol out like 4 months before. If it's a shorter race, I'll cut alcohol out like a month before. Just like nothing. I don't want it in my system. And then I don't like to, but I'll cut coffee out like a couple weeks prior as well. Just because I'm like, I don't want to have any caffeine in my system. And when I do take maybe some sort of caffeine, if I do need it, I want it to be able to hit. So, and I also use it as a carrot because I know like after a race, I'm going to have that cup of coffee that I'm looking forward to so much. So I do those things, and I never like looked into it too much. Those are just things for me. I was like, they're really helpful for me. I'm like, I'm sure other people do that as well, but those are good little hacks that I've found helpful. It's like, yeah, alcohol is like done. I don't need it anyway in day-to-day life, but I was like, I know for sure I don't want it like in my system at all, because you don't sleep, like you just don't sleep as well, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Alcohol is poison essentially. But dude,
It
interesting.
really is. Yeah.
That's such a cool philosophy. I think I might have to steal that from you, of like the like one day, like a couple weeks out from the race, just like go all in on your race day nutrition.
Yep.
I think that's it makes so much sense, but I've never heard of anybody doing that, because that's got to be one of the biggest hindrances to people finishing these longer races, is like they just can't get food down because their stomach's just not cooperating, but doing everything you can to make sure you're prepared from like a stomach standpoint. So I love that idea. Let's chat about Mountain Tough for a minute.
Yeah.
How did you get linked in with Mountain Tough, and just for anybody that doesn't know, kind of give us a rundown of what Mountain Tough does.
Absolutely. Mountain Tough, we're a fitness app, and so like my sister in the early days would call it like Peloton for hunters, but it started in 2016 by Dustin Diefenderfer. And Dustin is one of my good buddies. I met him at not that first trail race I did, but it was a couple years after that. It was at the Bangtail Divide trail race. I ran up to this guy in the middle of the race, and he had an elk horn on his shirt. And so I naturally started talking to him about hunting, because I figured if he had an elk horn on his shirt, he was probably a hunter. And it turns out he was. And we finished that race, and we became like fast friends after that. And through like just life and the cool way that life works. When he started Mountain Tough in 2016, I was going to Fuel Fitness still, doing my thing. He's like, could I train you? Because he's like, I want to train backcountry hunters, because he's a longtime runner and has run all kinds of stuff. And so, but he'd find when he put a backpack on and go in the mountains that he didn't have the endurance that he thought he would have from running, because it's two different disciplines. Like all of this is like what do you want to do, and what is that puzzle? How do you figure out how to do that well? So he started training backcountry hunters because there was a need. No one was training them specifically. A lot of people were doing their running and doing their strength, but it's a very unique blend of that. And for me, Mike Wolf started the Mountain Project, and Mike Wolf is a phenomenal runner. He's the one who puts on the rut. He started the Mountain Project gym in Bozeman at the same time that Dustin started Mountain Tough. And so both gyms, but proximity to my work, Mountain Tough was closer. So I was like, Mike, I'm sorry, I can't drive all the way across town to come to your gym. But I started training then with Dustin. One, he was my friend, and two, proximity was really close. And that, for me, was the point at which I really started dialing in my strength program, because I am a hunter. I noticed the same thing. I'd run, and I'm like, I can go up and down, and I can walk an elk down, honestly. But I started like really needing strength. As you get older, you lose muscle mass, especially running, and I was like, I just need that strength component. So it worked really well for me and kind of my formula with Mountain Tough. Fast forward a bit, like I was in software. I did software for like 8 years at a really great company, and I had a lot of time and flexibility to run all the time, which is awesome. But I came on board with Mountain Tough full time like a year and a half ago, essentially, because Dustin had grown the business and moved to an app based as opposed to a web based training platform. Moved to the app, and he's training backcountry hunters, but it's growing and growing. And so I stepped on board on the business side, just like my software experience and past business experience. Like, let's keep growing this and let's keep helping people on their path. So Mountain Tough, although focused initially on the backcountry hunter, is a really unique training style. It is like a hybrid athlete style. It's unique in and of itself. It's not CrossFit. It's not all endurance. It's not all strength. It's just this really unique blend. And so moving to the app, we're just able to meet a lot of people where they're at. So a lot along the lines of if you find running and you find it's something that you like to do, like you feel part of that community. And so the same goes for Mountain Tough. The style of workouts, people working towards doing a backpack hunt or going on a backpack trip, wanting to go to the mountains, or living where they live and just wanting to be fit and have a little different style, thrown in. Our app kind of meets that need, and we're getting better and better at it too. So like from a full beginner with all body weight programs to somebody who has a home gym to somebody who's going to the gym, we have programs to accommodate them in those blocks of training. So just pull up the app. We even have like follow along style too, which are really, really awesome to do. It's just like pull it up on your TV or on your phone or iPad and just follow along, because we just know that fitness it's like a portal. It just opens up this whole other world for so many individuals, and you don't have to run like to find that out. It's awesome if you do want to run to have some sort of strength supplement in there too, but we're not like running training specifically. I just happen to love to run. Like that's something that's near and dear to me. So this style of training lends itself well to that. But by and large, like one of our taglines is always ready. And Dustin, it was really like making sure that whatever it is that comes up, like you can go and do that. And you might not be the best at it. Like if it's a race, if you're training in this style, like you're not going to podium because you're not training specifically for a race, but you can go and do it and you can finish it and you can walk away not being hobbled too. So, and then in that, like we've just organically had this sort of military following, which is really cool because we're like backcountry hunting focused and mountain travel. And our style of training is like not a like go and PR on your deadlift style of training. It's not like I'm going to get hurt with these overhead lifts and that sort of stuff. So that's been really cool to see, and it's grown that side of the business for us too, as those in the military and some of these, groups and whatnot are like, this is what we've been looking for. We've been looking for this style for a very long time. And I do like, it's hard to explain the style, but it's like a blend. If you were to take you as a person and you would say, I'm a pie chart, I want this much strength and I want this much endurance. That's what Mountain Tough is. Like you find your program and you say, I want this much strength and this much endurance. I don't want to be too big. I do want to be fast. And you can kind of dial in a program specifically from there. So, yeah.
That's so cool, man. It's such a cool concept. And I don't know of anything else like that. Like, do you guys have a lot of competitors? Because I know it's kind of a niche market, I'm sure, because it's like, from a statistical standpoint, there's not a ton of hunters or people like actually in the mountains, I guess. But like for those people that are, like, that's a huge value for those people. And obviously that whole industry is growing, it seems like, especially with people getting more to trail running. And I'm sure COVID was a big shift and just people getting outdoors more. But like, do you guys have a lot of competitors? Like is there anything similar that's out there?
There isn't really anything similar to us. There's other fitness apps that are out there, of course, but when it comes to like that mountain specific style, like we want to do uphill travel, like under load, say, there's really not another app out there like us for that. But like even in that like niche market, like that hunting market, it's huge. A lot of people had never like trained for the mission. Like if you have a race and you get a coach or you follow a plan, you're training for that exact mission because you know that race is coming, you know the distance, all of that. Hunting or mountain travel or a backpack trip for that matter is a little bit different. You have a date on the schedule, but that's it. So what is the plan to get me ready for this trip that I have coming up? Or on the flip side of that, it's like, I just want to feel good in day-to-day life. Like I don't have a race. I don't aspire to run a race. Like, but I just want to feel good playing with my kids, and I want my back pain to go away. It's like that is a big portion of it as well. It's like we just want to provide a plan for people. We don't want you to have to think about it or Google search it to try to come up with one, because a lot of people like a lot of guys say that are my age, like early 40s, mid 40s, somewhere in there, they're like doing the same thing they did in high school. It's like, oh, like a little bit of chest, and then back day, and then leg day, and then I'm like, all of a sudden you're just like, what am I doing? You know, like I so to have somebody think of that for you, and to have something that you're like sort of identify with too, it's like, yeah, I like the ethos behind it. Like we're really big on fitness, but we're also big on mental toughness, because we know that in order to handle a lot of the actual hardships in life, like you do need to be mentally strong. So we have like mental toughness coaching, we have nutrition, not like specific coaching, but just general programs. We have a lot of PT and yoga also in the app. Although we don't call it yoga, we call it mountain movement, because people shy away from yoga sometimes, but it's like so beneficial for you to do that and then feel those benefits or those side effects of that, the positive side effects. So, and then last but certainly not least is like, we're really big on like, kind of call it the spiritual side, but like mindfulness, like, hey, like take time for yourself, like do rest, think about what your purpose is in this life. Like you are more valuable than just being a fit person, right? Like we just want people to understand that too. It's like, yeah, because stuff comes up, and you know, like, yeah, maybe you have an injury or you have some sort of life scenario. Don't beat yourself up because you're not in as good a shape. Just know you can get back on that path. Like when the time's right, you can get back on that path, and you can do this for the long haul. So
I love that, man, dude. It's such a cool idea. Like, you know, obviously for hunters, like you said, the military people that are trail running or just trying to be in the mountains, and I love that the slogan of like always ready, because I'm huge on like the functional fitness. Because like you were saying, I used to train like a bodybuilder where it's like I do chest and I just like bench press a bunch of weight, and it's like that's great, but it doesn't really do much for you. It's not going to help you know, like, build like that longevity into your life. And so I love that it's all based around that like functional fitness, kind of that hybrid athlete thing. If I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast are runners and trail runners, could that be like a good option for people like that?
Yeah. Like there's a book called Unbreakable Runner, and I forget the author of it. But he's a CrossFitter, and it's a great book. Like you look it up and buy it, like Unbreakable Runner. And for me, like that was really helpful in my path to like see like a training program where I could supplement CrossFit in if I wanted to, and then running. And there's a whole bunch of different plans in that book. And so for me, it was like easy, like supplement Mountain Tough in for those CrossFit style workouts, but then be able to run and do the intervals that you need to do in training for whatever length of race or style of race you're looking to do. And so for me, Mountain Tough is just that supplement. It's not CrossFit. I was like, I never really did CrossFit, but I do understand like the importance of the CrossFit community and how people just feel at home there, and they feel part of something and they're working towards something. So that like is really, really helpful in that running piece, because like you do need to have a couple strength days in there. You do need to have mobility when you're running. If you don't, like you will inevitably break down. I have a friend too who is in like that same group that would do those adventure runs that I finally got invited on. He is a really, really fascinating individual. He's an ER surgeon. But like early in my running career, he just told me, he was like, it's really important to have seasons, especially running. If you want to do this for a long time, and he's a phenomenal runner, like mid 50s, like, and you look at him and you're like, no way, you'd be like late 30s. Like you're just like really great shape. But he's like, run and then stop running and go ski, and do that for that season, or go hunt. And like go through these seasons, because you can't just run all the time. And he's a student of that, and it's really worked well for him and a lot of other people too. Like you see it pattern, because in the ultra world, like there's a lot of people that are in their 60s that are still doing it, and I guarantee you that they have that sort of seasonality. And so seasonality can be a strength program. Like it can be like a winter strength program, so that you put that on, you get that durability, you get that protection on your joints and everything that you need, and also you retain that muscle mass because like when you get older, as that starts going away, that's where people get like the stress fractures and they start wearing down on their hips. And I talked to a guy just last week on the phone, and he's 63, and he told me the same thing too. He called up because he had a question about his account and that sort of stuff, and he was like, I'm still doing this, and I really appreciate the strength side, but I also, like, he ran a lot, and he was like, I have 2 fake hips now because all I did was run, like, and that's not to scare people away. It's just to say, like, look at the blend and just know that you can't, it's all a puzzle. So, like, add in a couple different pieces, a couple different elements, whether that's yoga for you, like, go join hot yoga. Like, you want to see your running go, like, through the roof, do hot yoga. Like, it's so difficult, like, and your mobility like goes through the roof. You'll feel like you're on springs, like that sort of like blend is really, really helpful. And that's where Mountain Tough is filling that niche for some people. And hopefully more people too, as we continue to grow. So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I love that you guys add in all the other stuff, like the yoga or the mountain movement, as you call it, the mindfulness stuff. It's like a full, like all-encompassing kind of app. I love just the mission and like just because there's nothing else like it out there. I think you gave me access to it. I need to dive into it a little bit more because like I strength train like 4 to 5 times a week.
Okay.
But I do feel like I would just want to learn more and like see what, like how you guys trained, especially for myself as I'm getting more into these ultras and like the 100-miler specifically in these mountain races. Cause it's like, that's another good point too, of like somebody like me who lives not in a mountainous area. That's where I think the strength stuff comes into play even more. Cause if I'm trying to train here where it's totally flat, not on trails or anything, I have to supplement some other way to like try and get some of that mountain training.
Big time.
So that'd probably be a great piece as well. I love that. And the seasonality thing is huge too. Like I think it helps prevent burnout mentally. Also, because it's
100%.
If you're just running, it's going to kill you mentally at some point too. So I think, switching it up and having the seasons and, the strength training is huge for injury prevention, obviously. What is your, so I know you said business development's kind of your title there. What's like your sort of day-to-day duties look like?
Yeah, I'm just helping expand the reach. So we have a small team. We have 7 full-time folks too. And so just having conversations, even like meeting somebody like you, and then like through Colin, having those conversations, like that all came up out of like Sorenex's Winter Strong event that they do. Like I never met Colin before, right? And so it's just like I love the network. Like I love seeing how this world is so small and how you can help connect. And so on the business side, that's great for me because I do love fitness. I love like seeing people like tap into their full potential. So being able to expand that reach with Mountain Tough is really, really unique for me. So I'm passionate about that. And I like getting conversations started and just seeing where they go. It's kind of that whole thing is the plan is to have the conversation, and then out of that, like something great will typically happen. There's always a reason for everything. So I'm like, that for me is the big piece with Mountain Tough, expanding the reach. I blend a little bit into marketing, although I don't geek out on marketing. But yeah, we'll call it sales of sorts, but it's a pretty easy thing to sell. When it comes down to it, it's like, just try it out. Like on your journey, this may fit. This may be like the perfect solution to you where you're at right now, and you will benefit from committing to something. Like commit to the plan, and then just know that the plan changes and you can adjust as needed. So yeah, day to day, a lot of conversations, a lot of emails, text messages. Since I started at Mountain Tough, I'm like, I've never had this many like text messages for business on my phone ever. It was like always software. It was always email and phone calls. And now I'm like, I have a lot of phone calls. I have a ton of text messages. It's like my network is just like blown up. And it's really fun to get to share with people, like it's fun to get to share my experiences because I think that that's valuable to have those and share them. And then network. I'm like, how I never meet, somebody like you, and you're going to come back and run Bighorn. Not that I get to go down there and like crew you or pace you, but I can definitely share with you, like the race doesn't start till Jaws, like that was shared with me. I'm going to share that with you too. So yeah.
Dude, I need that. I love that though, man. Like just like I'm sure, the hunting and running communities are so similar, I feel like, because it's kind of a niche thing, from like the general population, it's a very small percentage. But because of that, it's such a tight knit community. Everybody knows everybody. And I feel like now like trail running and backcountry hunting are kind of becoming like interconnected, which is really cool.
Yep.
One thing I definitely wanted to ask you about is so one of my buddies and I were starting this running community brand called Switchback, and we're going to really lean into like trail running. We're starting with electrolytes, so it's like one part like high quality endurance supplements like electrolytes, and then the other part's going to be like a big focus on in-person events and running events and stuff. And it sounds like trying to do something with you guys would be absolutely perfect. Do you guys do a lot of in-person events or community things?
Since we're a small team, like it's hard for us to do the in-person pieces just because with life. But we just had our first like big community event called Tough Fest. It was in June. So that was like on site at our facility, like all day. Like there was a fitness component to it, but there was like a lot of speakers and that sort of stuff as well. So we're always game to help support and help spread the word about any of that stuff. Oftentimes we can't make it ourselves to those events, but fellow mountain toughers usually, like with the community as large as it is, are just like, yeah, I'm in, like I'll be there to help whatever it may be. But yeah, those sort of little, like, call them pop-up style events, like we have some like in the works too, where we're just like, oh, it'd be so cool to be able to pull this off, like everybody all at once, same time, same place, just different or same time, same date, different location. But yeah, we're always game. And then even if it comes down to just like a plan for a race, while we don't have like a 5K, 10K, that sort of stuff, it's like we do have really, really good functional fitness to just get you moving and get you feeling good so you can go do that. So we're always game. We should talk for sure and see how we can help out, because we're big on that as well. It's like even on the nutrition side, it's like there's a lot of these little things that people can do, and we're in an era where we can learn all of this stuff and then we can go and utilize it. So you don't have to take that like 3 to 5 years like I took of just being devastated and trying to figure it out. Like you can learn from other people and then put that all into a year and then go be successful in what you're doing a lot sooner. So
heck yeah. It's thanks to people like you and your personal sacrifices so that we can all learn from your mistakes.
I mean, not that smart of a person in a lot of regards, but just stubborn enough to be like, oh yeah, I'm hobbling. Great. I'll figure it out.
It's great that you guys now, like all of you guys, putting your own experiences, your own knowledge and everything into this really amazing app. So I hope some people that are listening to this will go check it out. I'm definitely going to dive into it some more. But dude, this was a ton of fun. I know you're a busy guy. You probably got a million phone calls and emails and text messages.
I'm off to Michigan. So I'm like, now I'll be, vacation. Although my brother-in-law in Michigan, he and his coworkers have been doing Mountain Tough for a really long time. They were some of the like early adopters of Mountain Tough, and like they are religious about it at their work. They have a gym at their work, and a couple of them are hunters, but then a couple of other guys that do Mountain Tough every day at noon. Like they just love Mountain Tough. It's like, yeah, they're not even hunters, but they, as colleagues at their work, they just go do Mountain Tough. And my brother-in-law still says, like, he's like, there's still people like every day, they've been doing this since like 2018, like that are just like, what are you guys doing? Like, why are you sweating so much? And they just have rolled it into their routine, and it just fits their lifestyles, so that my brother-in-law will say, like, when I want to go like help the neighbor move a chest freezer, because that comes up. It's like my back doesn't hurt me for
Yep.
however many days afterwards. But I'm like, I always go and try to get a workout or two in with them at their work gym, which is pretty fun in Michigan, which I was like, you guys
That's
are hard
awesome.
chargers. So, but yeah, man,
It's so
just
funny how like people that
that.
are getting it's funny how people that are getting after it, like if you have a healthy diet, you exercise every day, like you seem so crazy to the average person. It's like it's so
Yeah.
wild to me.
Yeah, we had, like there's a guy that emailed in, and he was like, I just have to tell you guys, I was at the gym on the rower, and he's going to town, and one of our workout programs, preseason prep, and he had picked that machine for his cardio portion. And there's another dude that came and got on the machine right next to him, and they both are just like going to town on the rowers, and they looked over and they're like, you doing mountain tough? And both of them were doing mountain tough. And I was like, that's when we know like we're doing the right thing, is like two people at the gym, not just one, are both side by side, and they're like, they don't know each other, but they both just happen to say like, you're working really hard. You must be doing mountain tough. So
That's awesome, dude. That's how you guys know you're making an impact too, is like when the community starts growing, and that word of mouth, I'm sure, is so powerful with that kind of thing too.
yeah, yeah, like just people finding something, um, saying, "Yep, this is something that I like line up with, identify with," whether that's running. But I always say to you, like, just know that you're not defined by being a runner or being a mountain tougher or being a hunter or just this or just that. Like, you're so much more. Like, you're a capable human being. You are like made, like, you are very, very special and unique, and you have a lot to offer this world. So like, let fitness be the portal that makes that evident to you. I can say that for even me, like in my journey, it's like, gosh, like, yeah, if I don't get a run, that's okay. Like, that's okay. But I've got all of these life lessons that I apply in my family, my work life, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, fitness in general is just, it's so spectacular in that regard. So just make sure you key into those little things, and be conscious of those lessons that you're learning in a short amount of time, because they'll pay off dividends when you have cancer pop up, or a death in the family, or you lose your job, that sort of stuff, or somebody's really tough to work with. It's like, shoot, it's no big deal. I'm like, it's just like a race. Just pace it out. You'll be fine. Like, take a deep breath, have some food, reset, and everything will be just fine. So, yeah.
Dude, that's beautifully said, man. Let's end it right there. I love that.
Cool. Dude, no, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for listening to me. So, thanks.
Oh, of course, dude. I love this, man. I love, like I said, I love hearing people's origin stories, and like more about their perspective and their thought process. And it's like, I just love learning from people and getting to know somebody. It's like, when else would we have been able to just sit on a call and chat for an hour and a half? It's like, I don't know, it's fun. I love podcasting so much. So thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, you should, when you come back up to Montana, we'll go on a mountain run, and we'll just go friggin'. I'm like, yeah, it's like a podcast on steroids. Like, go wander in the mountains for a while, and then just see what conversations come up, because that's pretty special as well. So, but yeah, more than welcome.
As long as I can keep up with you.
Oh no, you won't have any problem. I'm slow and steady, man. I'm just slow and steady. So, yeah, that's good.
I love it, dude. Well, where's the best place for people to connect with you, or if they want to get connected with Mountain Tough?
Yeah, like if anybody want to reach out to me, Weston, Weston at MTNTOUGH.com, just reach out for sure. Like, that's part of my job. So if you're interested in it, reach out to me directly. But check out Mountain Tough _fitness on the socials, all that stuff. We're out there, but you can go to mountaintough.com, learn more about the app as well, and you can check it out. There's like a 14-day free trial on it, so just check it out and see if it's something that fits the bill too in your life and your lifestyle. We're trying to fill that need, definitely. Even like the mental toughness piece, like you can do a free trial and do the mental toughness course. It's kind of like, hey, there's no fitness involved in it other than mental fitness. So it's like, yeah, just journal for 10 minutes in the morning and like learn some stuff about yourself. And then hopefully we're impactful in our own way on your life, and that you go and you flourish because of that. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks again, Weston. This was a blast, man.
Yeah, appreciate it for sure. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you in the next one.